Hello YouTube, Gaming Goddess here, doing a review of another game published by Atlas, an action role-playing game on PS2 called Odin Sphere. This game is told in a chronological story type order that is split among 5 different characters, which their individual stories intersecting with one another. Now, when you start off the game, it lets you pick your level of difficulty. Easy for those who want to enjoy the story. Normal provides enough challenge through the game, but you can also enjoy the story, of course. And hard, for more experienced players who really like a challenge. You can also pick if you want the voices to be in English or Japanese. Now moving on to the review. Before I get into the actual story itself, I would like to talk about the general gameplay. First off, this game looks and feels like a side-scroller, which hey, I'm not complaining, but I do wish it had a lot more freedom of where you can walk around, just like in any other RPG. Now, the way the world map works is there will be a little red flag, well, not little, but big, and that is the destination where you need to travel to in order to progress to the next part of the story. Some of these areas can cause your health to decrease, but there are items that can prevent this from happening. Fighting doesn't usually take too long, and you can usually collect a variety of items like maps to the areas that you are in, alchemy recipes, and food recipes. Now, the monsters you encounter are fairly easy unless they're mini-boss or the main boss. There are also ghosts, and this was a huge problem for me. I didn't like fighting the ghosts due to the fact that they are invisible or transparent, and you can't really attack them unless they become untransparent. Another problem with the ghosts is that there is a major boss battle later on in the game, and there's a bunch of them that you have to fight along with the boss. Well, I learned an easier way of doing it, and I don't feel like spoiling it for you, so go figure it out on your own. Anyways, there are special moves that your character can perform. Each character has a weapon that is also known as a cipher. This is made from a crystal from the netherworld. This weapon absorbs the souls of the enemy, which you defeat in battle. When you collect these souls, it will level up, and it will provide you with new magic that you can use throughout battling. Now, I know I mentioned alchemy and cooking recipes, so let's talk about that. This is a pretty cool feature in the game, once you get the hang of it, at least. Now, there are tutorials for this stuff, and I kinda just skipped over it. But basically you can fuse 2 items together to make health or antidote and stuff like that when you use alchemy, and cooking you can use to make food that will also cure you. So now moving on to the next part of this review, the story. Now like I said, it is told in chronological order, and there are 5 different characters that you can play. Each character has their own story that intertwines with the other characters in the game. I'm going to go through every character and their story, but I'm going to try not to give away too many spoilers. First up, we have Gwendolyn, the Valkyrie princess and daughter of the demon lord Odin. Being a Valkyrie, her overall personality is actually pretty brave, and she's always willing to put herself into battle at her own free will. She's unafraid of dying. She even welcomes her honorable flaws. Aside from being brave and restless, she's actually pretty sweet and caring. As you go through her story, you'll notice that she often battles with her inner thoughts, which results in some of the actions of being brave. Now, her battle style. Well, Gwendolyn has an ability to fly. As you fly, you can perform a dive bomb attack. I think that's what it's called. This is a much stronger attack than just her regular basic attack. There's also an ability that she has. Well, it's more of a magic spell that can be casted using her cipher. It is the Shadow Ally, which creates a shadow doppelganger of herself, and it helps you in battle. Now, something that you should know if you're interested in playing this game is when you level up Gwendolyn, you have to be patient. Her cipher takes forever to level up. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's one of the slowest level ups in the whole game. Overall, I personally liked her. She's a pretty cool character. She's brave, and I loved every second of her story, and the cutscenes were just so dramatic. She automatically gets a 10 out of 10 for me. Our second playable character, Cornelius, noble prince of the human kingdom Titanium. Once a human, now a puka. Pukas are these rabbit-looking creatures. They're so cute. So here we have a prince. He is pretty courageous in what he believes in, but this makes him quite naive. He is a hero and will do whatever he can to help anyone who needs it. I also notice he's a bit of a romantic. I don't think it would be much of a spoiler if I said anything, but if you watch the first cutscene to his story, he's pretty much in love with Velvet, who is another main character. in the game, who I'll talk about later. So Cornelius is now a puka, and he wants to figure out who turned him into one and if he can change back. I could answer this, but that would actually be quite a bit of a spoiler to the game, and I don't plan on doing that for you guys. Now a little bit about his fighting technique and battle style. Here Cornelius has a sword for his weapon that is also made out of the diamond from the underworld. As a puka, Cornelius can move pretty fast, which is actually really great in battle. His strong attack is a rapid spin slash, which allows him to damage an enemy by bouncing off of the enemy. His cipher actually levels up pretty fast. The only bad thing about that is it seems like it takes a little bit longer for his magic skills to be learned though. But I didn't really care too much because I ended up using the cyclone the whole time anyways. So here's just a little fun fact. In the beginning of the story, it says that Cornelius is to be wed to Odin King's daughter, but it never technically says if it's Griselda or Gwendolyn. So I guess you can make that assumption yourself. Overall, there was never a dull moment with Cornelius, and I did like the meaning of the story, and it was kind of cute how he was so dead set on keeping his loved one from finding out that he was a puka. Plus, his accent is super adorable, so 10 out of 10 for me. Next up, we have Mercedes, the third playable character in this game. First of all, you either love her or you hate her. Reason to this is because she plays completely different from any other character in the game, but she is the most powerful of them all. It takes a while to get used to her character's playing style. Her power gauge is also different. It decreases when you attack like everyone else's, but you don't have to wait for it to fill back up. Instead, you have to reload the weapon yourself when it's empty. She's actually a pretty brutal character if you learn how to use her correctly. Oh, and she can fly, unlike Gwendolyn, who kinda just glides for a short period of time. First seen as Princess of the Fairies, Mercedes is rather cute, spoiled, and carefree, who ends up having to take the responsibilities of being queen. Because of the stress that is brought onto her by becoming the queen, she often panics and becomes depressed, struggling with ways to cope with the issue. Aside from being the most powerful character, Mercedes also is the slowest character, and she's pretty weak at jumping. This could be a problem when fighting some of the bosses, but like I said, once you get the hang of it, she can be pretty brutal. So my final thoughts on Mercedes. I hate her. I hate her so much it's not even funny. Being the most powerful character did not help me at all because learning her character while trying to get through this game was extremely difficult for me. I had so much trouble on the boss battles. I mean, she's a good character when it comes to just going through the different levels, but boss fights were not for me. Her movement was way too slow. I didn't like how you had to reload the weapon every time it ran out, and on top of that, her health doesn't level up very high either, like some of the other characters' health. But, I mean, with all the stuff that I hate about her, her overall story was actually really good. It was interesting in the fact of seeing how much she grows with losing her mother and everything that she has to go through and just being the queen in general. It really amazed me. But it was kind of depressing, and I mean, if you like stuff like that, hey, go for it. You'll probably love her just as much as the next person. But for her, I'm gonna have to give her a 9 out of 10. Alright, so next up we have Oswald, the Shadow Knight, and fourth playable character to our story. Abandoned as a baby, he was taken in by Melvin, who is Mercedes' cousin, to serve the Fairy Kingdom. The best way to sum up his personality is bloodthirsty, cruel, and hateful. He's very aggressive and will slay anyone who gets in his way. Though, aside from this hateful side of him, I feel like he holds a lot of resentment. At first you see him slaying a dragon because Melvin told him to. This is where I think the resentment comes into play, because he is talking about his father versus Melvin. The cool thing about fighting with Oswald is his shadow form. It's ultra powerful, which I really liked using it personally, but it does drain your power gauge pretty fast. But overall, with the unlimited power alchemy potion and the shadow form, it works out pretty well with a bunch of the boss battles. It was extremely helpful. So my final thoughts on his character? Well, his story was really good. Actually, I think it was probably one of the best stories I've seen throughout this entire game. I really enjoyed it, watching the emotions that he shares with the player about his father and everything that he goes through with just being a Shadow Knight in general, and of course falling in love. Probably one of the best. 10 out of 10. Finally, we have Velvet, our fifth and final playable character in this game. Personally, I think she is the best character out of this entire game, even though I feel like she might be the weakest, or maybe I just didn't know how to use her correctly, but she's still pretty awesome. Velvet has a lot of issues, but I don't blame her, especially after seeing everything she goes through in her storyline. Velvet and her twin brother, Inway, are the last survivors of the destroyed kingdom of Valentine. She is seen as a serious character, but overall she's sweet, kind, and even motherly. Also, she's very determined in succeeding in her goal to prevent Armageddon from happening. Her fighting style is more or less the same as everyone else's. She uses a chain, which is kind of, I guess, range, but not too much. Again, close quarter combat works the best. Like I said, she feels like the weakest out of all the characters. She can also swing across stuff, which is pretty cool, but sometimes I wonder what she grabs onto. Seriously, there's some places where there's nothing there for even the chain to attach to, but whatever. So my final thoughts on Velvet, after seeing everything she goes through, I really feel for her. She's such a strong character, just as everyone else. It's amazing watching the cutscenes. There's never a dull moment. There's always so much passion towards every scene. 10 out of 10. That concludes the individual stories for the characters. If you thought it ended there, well, nope. There is one more book for our little Alice to read. This determines whether you get the good ending or the bad ending. So, all in all, the fighting techniques of the characters were not hard to learn at all. Cornelius and Gwendolyn were actually the only two characters who can block. It was kind of lame in my opinion, but that's how they made it. The graphics were just simply beautiful. The story flowed ever so perfectly. You can tell that the voice actors really put a lot of emotion into every character. It was practically like watching an anime. Well, at least in my opinion it was. The soundtrack, of course, could not have been better. The music flowed perfectly with every scene, and again, like I said with Velvet, there was never a dull moment. There was always just so much emotion, and if you like 2D role-playing side-scroller type games, you should definitely check it out if you haven't already. I would definitely recommend this game for anyone out there who is just into this kind of stuff. So yeah, this has been a Gaming Goddess review, and remember to keep on gaming!